you to, if you make your, I don't want long dialogues. I just want the points. So if you're ready to go to the phones, I just want point. I disagree with that, and if you disagree, just put your hand up. I disagree with that. This is what I'm looking at. I look at it this way, because I got a letter from some of my deep contacts in Israel that went after the Anti-Defamation League for a letter that they wrote in regards to our last show, and I didn't appreciate that. Well, apparently the Israeli government didn't appreciate it either, because they came down at the Anti-Defamation League hard. They wrote the letter saying, you have no idea what Mr. Myers has done, you have no idea what he stands for, and so forth, and how dare you, because he wants to he could talk about this issue in downtown Israel or downtown old Palestine if he wanted to, and get less of a reaction than this. But I'm not going to get into all that. All I want to do is I want to put this issue on the table. I want to get some calls, and I want to get you guys moving, and we're going to do it again. We'll go, because I'm telling you.
We're going to have a thing in the library. We're going to do a public library event.
Oh, that's awesome. I'd like for you both to come do a church event.
I have,
because see, the biggest problem for me is going to be, these aren't going to be Jewish children that are going over to the Middle East to fight. These are going to be my children. They're going to be poor children. They're going to be children who are in volunteers in the army. They're going to be going over to that region. I'm concerned about that. I am very concerned about that. I'm tired of burying kids. I buried 15 this year from Iraq, Afghanistan. I'm tired. I don't want to bury another soul, whether it be Israeli, Palestinian, or whatever. We got to find a way. There's got to be something better than this. It just has to be.
Well, according to the scriptures, which I'm a firm believer in, it's not going to happen until Mashiach comes.
I know.
Unfortunately, it's going to get worse.
I thought the Mashiach already came.
Well, according to the scriptures, and according to the rabbinic understanding, they think that there's a potential there might be two Mashiachim. One is called Messiah ben Joseph. One is called Messiah ben David. We don't believe that there's two Messiahs. We believe that there's one Messiah who came in the first time to bring Karbonis Kippura, atonement for the souls of all mankind, according to Isaiah 53, and that he's coming again to be the conquering Messiah ben David, the conquering servant, to bring judgment upon the earth. And so if you look at the scriptures, you see that there are many different passages, Isaiah 2, Micah 2, that talk about these things.
Well, I don't want to get the phone call, so I'm coming back to you, and then and then we're gonna try to get further out, because I'm gonna take some phone calls. Hopefully some people will call.
I think they will. I think there's a lot of interest out there.
No, I think there's a ton of interest, because people know that this is my program director. Well, I don't really think it's that important. What? Are you crazy? Well, I've been to Israel before. I don't care whether you've been to Israel before. This is one of the biggest issues on this planet right now as to what's going on there. This is huge. Stand by. Welcome back. Jimmy Myers behind the microphone here at 96.9 Boston Talks. Messianic Rabbi Henry Morse is my special in-studio guest, along with Jeff Klein, as they both look at two different sides of the Israel-Palestine issue. Rabbi Morse, before we go to the phones at 617-822-1969, here's some of our people in the comments they want to make. Some of the things that you want to bring up very quickly?
You know, we want to talk about the concept of whether the Palestinian, as we understand it today, the Palestinian people are the ancient indigenous people of the land. And based upon the history that I have studied objectively, that you can find in any common library, plain and simple, there are many, many writers who have written on this topic and talk about the desolation of the land of Israel before the Jews moved back, that it was under the rule of the Ottoman Turkish Empire from 1517 to approximately 1970. Exactly. Mm-hmm. So, you know, at that point, the Ottoman Turkish Empire would tax you based upon the amount of trees you had. If you had trees in your land that were not fruit-bearing trees, they would tax you. So for all intents and purposes, they strafed the trees, shipped many of the trees and the lumber to Europe, etc., ruined the land, deforested the land, and it became a desolate, barren, horrible wasteland. Okay. And until the Jews started moving back in the mid-1800s, up until the late 1800s, under Theodor Herzl and many of the other leaders, you have this horrible, desolate wasteland. Jews were buying land off of absentee landlords for $1,000 an acre.
An acre, yep.
Yeah, mm-hmm. As opposed to the best land that was selling in America for $110 an acre. And they were purchasing this malaria-infested swamps. They were making olive groves, and they were making, they were replanting trees. They were planting olive, and I said olive, and orange,
peaches,
yeah, everything.
Fruit,
and they
yeah.
brought the land back. If you look at pictures of the land before they came and settled it with the kibbutzim, the moshavim, it was desolate, it was barren. And I'm telling you that if you look at the historical, even the writings of Mark Twain, and if I'll just very quickly quote him. He says on his journal, Innocents Abroad, he says, "It's a desolate country whose soil is rich enough, but is given wholly over to weeds, a silent, mournful expanse of desolation. We never saw a human being on the entire route, hardly a tree or a shrub anywhere. Even the olive tree and the cactus, those fast friends of the worthless soil, had almost deserted the country."
Okay.
Go, Jimmy.
Jeff.
Well,
Not exactly what Palestinians will say, because Palestinians were there, even living on this dry and barren land.
It's not exactly what the truth says. This idea that Palestine was an empty land or a land without a people is part of the sort of Israel propaganda mythology. That
Did Mark Twain lie?
Well, Mark Twain was not a scientist or an anthropologist. What he saw and what he believed, I have no idea. But there are census documents from the entire period. And Palestine was heavily populated, both in the Turkish period and during the British Mandate period, by Palestinians, Palestinian Arabs, who, it's important to say, were both Muslims and Christians. Now, up until around 1900, the Jewish population in Palestine was under 10% and remained under 10% for a number of decades following that. Most of the good land was cultivated. The famous Jaffa oranges, which were exported all over the world, were produced by Arab farmers around the city of Jaffa. So this idea that Palestine was empty is mythology, and it's the mythology that colonialists use whenever. You know, when the Pilgrims came to North America, they said America was empty. It was ready for the taking. Of course, it wasn't empty. It was inhabited by native peoples here who lived a different lifestyle. So this issue of Palestine as a desert has been debunked by every serious historian. And to cite Mark Twain as an authority to say otherwise is just, it's absurd.
Okay,
it's absurd.
hold on.
Can I quote the Peel Commission? Maybe you have a problem with this. The Peel Commission, which was 1936 to 1937, known as the Palestinian Royal Commission, was a British Royal Commission of inquiry set up to propose changes to the British mandate of Palestine. According to the Peel Commission report, the Arab allegations regarding Jewish land purchases were unfounded. Much of the land now carrying orange groves were sand dunes or swamp and uncultivated when it was purchased. There was at that time of earlier sales little evidence that the owners possessed either the resources or training needed to develop the land.
Jeff?
Yeah, well, I'm sorry. You know, the agriculturist statistics, as opposed to someone's opinion, were kept meticulously by the British. And in every area of agriculture, in fruit trees, grain production, vegetable production, the bulk of agricultural produce in Palestine during the British Mandate was by Arab cultivation. And at the time that that report was written in the 30s, the population of Palestine was almost 1 million Arabs, Christians and Muslims, and less than 200,000 Jews, most of whom had arrived very recently. So the idea that somehow the Jews made the desert bloom and nobody was there before they came is just an absurdity. It's an absurdity.
All right, let's spin it. I want to come up to the day because we're getting calls, getting ready to start backing up. 617-822-1969. Pound 96.9 if you're calling from a Verizon wireless phone. It's a free call. Lisa's in Chelsea. Lisa, you're on 96.9 Boston Talks. Go ahead, Lisa. Join into the conversation.
Hashemites.
King Abdullah at that time. King Abdullah was the leader of Jordan at that time.
Okay. Why do you think they are? Thanks, Lisa, for your call.
Let me respond to that, Jimmy, because you know, this is not a matter. You know, I don't know what Thomas Friedman says, but I have read the League of Nations mandate to the British and the French. The Middle East was divided up, as in those days it was considered okay for colonial powers to run other parts of the world. And the French got the northern part of the Middle East, Syria and what became Lebanon, and the British got the southern part, what became Palestine, Jordan, and Iraq. And in the League of Nations mandate, the mandated powers have the right to divide up their territory as they see fit for various reasons. This is written into the mandate. So the French decided to divide their mandate in Syria into a Syrian part and a Lebanese part, and the British divided their part of the mandate into a Palestine part and a Jordan part. This was perfectly legitimate. It was in what the legal framework of their mandate was, and it made sense from an administrative point of view.
Okay. Now you get to 1948 in the United States, because someone had called earlier, somebody had mentioned earlier, I don't know if it was you, Rabbi, when you said that Israel had no weapons or whatever. They had the backing of the United States of America.
Actually, not really,
when
because
they went there in 48.
if you look at what happened, I've been to Israel many times, and I've hosted tours as well as the fact that I'm going to be doing more. I've seen underground munitions factories. I've been in them. This is objective, tangible, touchable. When the Brits, previous to the nation of Israel becoming a nation in 48, they were not allowed, based upon the white papers, to produce any of their own armament. So they had to literally, underground, and I've seen them, they actually had an ammunition factory built under a laundromat at a kibbutz, where you had to move these monstrous machines to get in under the ground so they could make ammunition to defend themselves because they were under attack. We're talking about this whole concept of dividing the land and what was promised to Israel. When the Balfour Declaration in 1917 gave the land to Israel, they gave them the entire land of Israel as we know it today, and Jordan, known as Transjordan.
Transjordan.
Yes.
Now let me ask you a question.
Wait, let me finish. I want to talk about that.
Okay.
It was eventually whittled back to 17.5% of the original land mass that was promised. The issue that we're dealing with now is that the Jews back then accepted that land at the protestations of the Muslims, the Arabs, and those who were in there who wanted the...
Muslims and Christians, Rabbi.
The point is, I said Arabs. I said whatever you want to encompass that into. So the point is, they accepted it, and yet they still protested on May 15th, 1948. They attacked them. What was the necessity for them to attack them then, May 15th, 1948, when they accepted it and they would not allow them to exist as a people? This is what incensed. Where was the protestation?
Yeah. Well, in today's world, the idea that Britain, as a foreign power, would give away part of a land that they didn't own and didn't belong in to someone else who didn't own and belong there is just ridiculous. They made a declaration in 1917 not to give Palestine to the Jews, but to allow Jews to have a national home in Palestine. It didn't imply a state, didn't imply dominance.
It was under British mandate until they could get control of their country's situation.
And they had no right to do that, to give away someone else's land then, without consulting the people that lived there. And the Palestinians were under no obligation to accept this, as nobody would. If someone came into my country and said they had a right to take it away, we wouldn't accept that either.
Hold on, Rabbi. Whoa, I can feel we're going there. 617-822-1969, pound 969 if you're calling from a Verizon wireless phone. Feel free to call and hear some of your opinions. You've heard some of the history. I'm going to spin it up to where we are right now, today, because history is history. And I know history because I've studied it my whole life, and a lot of it's written the wrong way. Then we find out years later, well, that wasn't said. You can even hear these two distinguished gentlemen debating here as to what someone wrote, what someone gave away, I would still have an issue that if someone came to America tomorrow and came into my home and said, look, by this mandate from the Russian government, I'm taking over your home, and you can live in this little bathroom quarter that you own in your house, I might have a serious problem with that. But that said, and we're going to hear your side too, 617-822-1969, Vicky and all the others, hold on, we'll get right to you. First we got to take a commercial break. We'll be right back. Oh, man.
Are you going to get heat?
Am I going to get heat?
Yes.
No, I got my heat already, believe me. Partner, I got my heat, Rabbi. And all I said was, look, I didn't say anything that was anti-Jew, anti-Palestinian, anything. All I know is I've been in that region, and I can't even tell you all the stuff I've done there. So, and I'm not laying my life out there. I've put my life on the line for both sides. I just refuse to believe that people have the right to treat other people just because you are here. Okay, you've come here, you've done whatever you're going to do, you're here now. I don't think Palestine has the right to tell Israel that it cannot exist. I don't think Israel has the right to herd all of these Palestinians into the Gaza Strip.
They're not.
And leave them there. Yes, they have.
They want their own land. They gave them the Gaza. They gave them Gush Katif under the understanding that they would develop and do something with it. And the question is, in good faith, how much land do they have to give away and to appease them? Now, if you gave them land and they settled it, you'd say, fine, genug, finika put satut, you did good. Let's work on this. But they didn't.
We're going to speak Yiddish.
A little Yiddish, a little French, Yiddish.
I like that.
Yiddish.
Okay,
So,
go ahead.
but they didn't. They ended up lobbing bombs. And I'm going to tell you this right now. If you're talking about the issue of the indigenous ancient people. Now, that's a questioned premise. I'm telling you, historically speaking, there are no such thing as the ancient indigenous separate Arab people known as Palestinians. They didn't exist. Palestine was a term that was given to anyone who lived in the region, including the Jews, and all the Jews that were there were called Palestinians.
Yes, they were.
And the Jews that were there, who had, instead of what's the name of the paper? They had the Palestinian Gazette, which was dedicated by Jews, for Jews, as a Jewish paper. All these things that were there are historically proven that it was Hadrian who invented this name. Why is it that the Jordanians, and I have quotes from some of their leaders that basically say that we are Syrians, we are Jordanians. I'm going to quote them in a short while. They make nothing or no statement about the fact that they are an indigenous ancient people known as Palestinians. They don't exist. And then you have to ask yourself...
You're saying Palestinian, the people, the word Palestinian people doesn't exist?
Doesn't apply to an indigenous ancient people known as Arab.
Okay, you're not saying they don't exist, because they exist.
They exist.
But you're saying as an indigenous people.
As the ancient, the Jews have been there for 3,000 years. The capital of Israel, Jerusalem, celebrated its 3,000th year as a capital. Where in the Quran is Jerusalem even mentioned? I've read the Quran many times. It's not even mentioned. It's not even mentioned. And I'm not picking on anyone. I'm just saying Jerusalem is not even mentioned. Why is it all of a sudden so important for them to have this ancient indigenous land when they have land large enough to make up a country the size of America? 1/3 of Canada, Alaska, and Hawaii. If you took all the surrounding, all the nations,
all the nations,
all the Muslim nations.
I was going to say, wow,
all the Muslim nations.
Israel doesn't own that much land.
No.
You're talking about Israel. You're talking about Arabs.
Arabs.
Okay.
No. I'm talking about Muslims.
Wait a minute. Hold on. How much? 1 minute. Go ahead.
I'm talking about Muslims.
Okay.
Not Arabs, because we are 1/16 of 1% of the Arab nation size. The size of Israel is 1/16 of 1% of all the Arab nations. The Mediterranean basin. Okay, those Arab nations. All the world, America, 1/3 of Canada, Alaska, and Hawaii. Muslim nations. Jews can't have New Jersey, and they can't have the size of New Jersey.
But it still boils down to this: the Arabs feel, or the Muslims feel, you took their land.
We didn't take their land. We bought it. We cultivated it. They strafed it and abandoned it.
How? You went with a mandate. You moved in.
And
That's
the mandates that were given were also there was land cut out for the Arabs.
Okay. I mean, you got people sitting here making decisions. Okay. Israel, Palestine, the ongoing argument. Who owns what? Who has the right to what? Ever since 1948, when Israel became a state, in this month, I'll say the night of the 14th, going into the 15th. That way I know I'm covered. Okay? May 5th, 14th, 15th. Israel becomes a nation. Ever since that day, old Palestine, or the people who were in Palestine, claim they took our land. They took something that was ours. Now, we can sit here and argue all day as to who's right and who's wrong. But I want to hear from some people. Vicky's in Rhode Island. And I'm just talking about Israel's treatment of the Palestinians, Palestinian treatment of Israel. I'm not in favor of terrorism on anybody's part. But remember, our founding fathers were considered terrorists by the British. So terrorism has been with us forever. But Vicky, chime into this conversation as we get, as we'll go a little deeper here on 617-822-1969, pound 969. If you're calling from a Verizon wireless phone, we'll get you right through. Vicky, go ahead. Thank you for calling.
Pleasure.
I heard that. Believe it or not, Vicky, I heard that. I heard her speech that day. And it's still the mantra of so many terrorist groups or people within that region. There's a hatred of Israel. There's a boycott Israel. I'm not here to boycott anybody. Israel is there now. Israel's not going anywhere. Vicky, how do we make some type of lasting peace? Because the Palestinians are saying there will never be peace until we get them out of here, and so forth. And how do we deal with that? Because remember, just as you just previously mentioned, we're in this up to our necks. America's in this up to our necks. Oh. And I don't want any more troops going to the Middle East either, Vicky. You understand? I don't want any more troops, whether it's to defend Israel or whomever. Let me get to Jack in Brockton. Jack, you're on 96.9 Boston Talks. Go ahead, Jack. How are you? I don't. Yeah. I got your point, Jack. Go ahead. I believe that. I definitely believe that part, Jack. Thank you for your call. Rabbi, his thoughts there, that this is biblical, that it is written,
Absolutely.
that this will go on, and that regardless of what we do as people, we cannot stop it. Do you agree with that?
I agree with that 100% because unfortunately, and this is going to sound like an attack, and I want to first of all say I am not anti-Muslim.
Okay.
All right, I want to introduce, he's right here, my son-in-law to be, his name is Mohammed Mahmoud Awadallah.
Okay.
Marrying my daughter, I will have the pleasure of marrying him very soon. He's sitting
God
right
bless
here.
you. That's
He's a
wonderful.
Now, he is an Arab.
Mhm.
His father's an Arab. He's not a Muslim, but he's an Arab.
Mhm.
I love Arab people. I have one in my family now.
No. That's one of the. I can always say I have Jewish friends,
All
and
right,
black
good.
friends, and
All right.
let's not go
So
there.
this isn't
I
against-
just want to respect him for
No,
being
right.
there. But go ahead.
But the point is, I'm not against
Okay.
a person. I'm against an ideology. I'm against an ideology. And there is an ideology, forgive me, all of those who are out there listening, I do not mean to start trouble, but it can't help it. It's a troubling conversation. There are statements, and I'm not going to overstep my bonds, in the Quran that call for the annihilation of my people. I'm not bad-mouthing them, I'm quoting them. May I quote?
Go.
Okay. In Surah 5 of the Quran, and I've read the Quran a number of times, and it's in context with, and I'll just read a couple quick blurbs. It says, basically, in Surah 5:51, do not take Jews and Christians for friends. And I don't want to read the whole thing because of the sake of context. Chapter 5, you can read it. It's in the Quran. If you can go online, you can find this. And then later on, in 5:60, in the context, he says that, shall I inform you of him who is worse than this in retribution from Allah? Who worse is he from whom Allah has cursed and brought his wrath upon, and of whom he made apes and swine? He's talking about the Jews. In the Hadith, it talks about how there will come a time when the rocks will cry out and say, "Oh, rocks," and to the trees, I'm just paraphrasing, "there is a Jew behind me, come and kill him." Now, I have a problem with someone threatening to kill my people. I don't have a problem, they can believe what they want in this pluralistic nation, but I have a real problem when someone threatens to wipe my people off the face of this earth based upon the history of the world. You know something? I take that serious.
You made great points, and yes, you should take that seriously. But I would want to go one step further. What, as far as Palestinians are concerned, I'm sure Jeff will say this, you're a nation with 200 nuclear weapons. They're going to say, who's going to wipe you out? Who is going to, you have the best Air Force in the region, best Navy in the region, best Army in the region. You can sit there and no one's going to be able to take you out. Yet at the same time, wait a minute, you asked the question.
I just do my finger. Just do my finger.
Question, okay? And I'm sure because we've all been there. You understand? I'm saying no one has the right to take human life. I don't care if it's in the Quran or whatever, but there's in the Bible, in my Bible, King James Version, where they talk about killing people, where they're talking about what they did and so forth. That's right in my Bible. I learned death from the Bible. I didn't learn death from real life. But I'm just saying, I didn't learn it from there. But what I'm saying is, if I want to look at the other side is going to say they have is just as compelling an argument as you, Jeff. The other side.
I mean, look, we're not going to solve the problems of the modern world by quoting scripture, or at least in my opinion. And in fact, a religious-based view of the world and a guide to action is one of the problems of today and not one of the solutions. I don't believe justice for the Palestinians is based on the Bible, the Quran, or anything else. It's a matter of human rights. And again, as the rabbi keeps saying, this is not Muslims versus Jews. He keeps saying this and then backing off. The Palestinians are both Muslims and Christians, and they are struggling.
The majority of them are Muslims.
They are struggling for their national rights as a people. That's the bottom line. There are 800,000 Palestinians were expelled from their land and never allowed to return, despite the fact that under international law, the United Nations and all the international legal opinions since then, they have a right to return to their homes and get their property back, and Israel has never allowed that.
Okay.
Never.
Okay.
That's the bottom line.
Hold on. We got to take a break. We got to do business. 617-822-1969. Pound 969 if you're calling from a Verizon wireless phone. Free call. I'm getting ready. Hold on. Yeah, make a talk during the break. Please. It is my show. Last time I checked. Let me see. Let me look behind me. Do I have the guns that I need? I got guns. Don't worry. We're going to more or less wrap this up when we get back, because I got a couple more topics I've got to get to. But you will start when we get back, Rabbi, okay? 617-822-1969, pound 969 if you're calling from a Verizon wireless phone. Free call. You've heard the history. You know where we stand today. Where do you stand in this issue? Give me a call. Okay, as soon as we come back, you're going. Okay?
I would like to do this. Muslims, but every time you speak, you say
I'm not speaking against the individual. I'm speaking against the ideology. The ideology, because if I do know
are Christians as well,
and they are the absolute minority. The Christians are the absolute minority. The point is, you have only in Israel, in that whole region, do the Christians have freedom of religion? They don't have that. Go to Mecca and see the separation. They will not allow Christians to go.
About Mecca.
It's a Muslim nation.
It's a Muslim. No. It is the Muslim central point.
It is the Muslim.
I've been to Mecca.
You're right.
I prayed at Mecca, and I'm a Christian. I was taken by my Muslim friends there. I was allowed to pray over here. I wasn't allowed to pray over there, like you said. And I was told you cannot go anywhere near that place.
Christians can go to the Wailing Wall.
Yeah, we can. Yeah. I've been to Wailing. Yes. You can go anytime, day or night. You can go to the Wailing Wall. Here, you better not be caught in Mecca.
Or you're dead.
Exactly. No, you just turn up gone. They won't even find you.
But they'll find your head.
They'll find your head.
Palestinian Christians are under the Muslim government. It's not like the Muslims are giving them tons of freedom, and it's not like they always give them.
It's churches all over the West Bank and all over the West Bank. Gaza. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Hamas,
What is the word Islam? What does it mean? What does it mean? What does Islam mean? It means submission.
Submission.
Submission to God.
Yes, submission to Allah. To Allah.
Allah is God.
No, Allah is their God. He's not my God.
Allah is God.
No, Allah is the moon god of the Kaaba.
Guys, hold on. Time out. Millions of stars are placed in the
Say
sky.
I'm not going to insult you.
By one guy.
Don't say
so,
Ayman.
Let's not just say.
Let's have passion, but don't insult me with a with a name.
Because it's racist when you say that.
It's not racist. I'm telling you the fact.
Muslim Arab Christians.
But don't call me a name. I won't call your name.
Christians, and in their
Christian
oppressed. Bible,
they're
God is Allah.
No,
yes.
The word Allah is a name that comes from the moon god of the Kaaba.
When it comes from, in the
it's
Arabic,
not the God of Israel.
In the Arabic Christian Bible, God
is Allah. It's a wrong translation.
Allah.
He's a Jewish God.
They don't know their own language.
He's a Jewish God. His name was not Allah. Allah is not a Jewish word. His name was
called Jehovah. He's called Allah.
He's not called Allah. Nowhere in the scriptures is he called Allah. He's called Yod He Vav He, which is the tetragrammaton, which is the unpronounceable. It means I am that I am. He's not called Allah.
He is called I am.
He is not called Allah. Nowhere in the scriptures.
What?
Look at the Dead Sea
I'm talking about
Scrolls.
their scripture.
Well, hang
But
on,
not
hang
in
on,
the
hang
Dead
on.
Sea Scrolls.
Can we just talk about the treatment? How are the treatment of the
I've been to
Palestinian
churches
Christians?
all over the West.
Doesn't matter, they're
That's
wrong.
fine. They're there. They're there.
It's Jewish
And
faith.
no one's saying they're not there.
It is-
No one's saying
is
there's
your faith the
Christians
Jewish
there.
faith?
A worshiping.
But
My
that's
faith?
fine.
Yeah, as a believer in
How
Jesus.
they
Isn't
Yes,
it?
absolutely.
Not a Muslim faith. Not an
No, I
Arab faith.
don't know. That's what I was asking.
But I've been to Muslim temples. I've sat with these people. When you can't block people in a group because of an ideology. A lot of people don't. They read the Quran the same way some people read the Catholic Bible. I don't believe in killing Jews, or I don't believe in that.
But if the Muslims stop bombing us and stop bombing us in Israel, I guarantee that at peace. If they stop,
You think so?
with everything that's within me, if they stop lobbing bombs and if they stop killing Jews, there'd be peace.
Okay.
Because based upon what I read in this book right here,
Okay. All right.
I'm not saying there's not wackos, but we are saying
My problem is on both sides. They are zealots. They are people
There's
that are
always
so
zealots.
but
they're the minority in the
No, they're
Jewish
not.
community.
No, they're not. No, they're not. In either community. In either community. They're the ones that are causing the
15
problem.
million Jews,
Oh, we got
1.3
calls.
billion.
Okay, let's talk to some of these people because I can hear my program director. Oh, I'm getting in for this. Got a half an hour.
96.9 Boston Talks.
Welcome back, Israel Palestine. Very quickly before we go back to the phones, Rabbi Henry Morse, you wanted to say something very quickly that I got calls backed up. I want to get to
I
some.
wanted to say, if you could only hear the conversations that were taking place off air.
Oh yeah, I know. Well, they're not. Our audience isn't privy to that.
Yeah,
Go
I
ahead.
know. I want to quote from, and you the last time when we talked, you said, I just want facts. I just want the facts.
Yeah.
You and Joe Friday, you just want the facts.
No, forget Joe Friday.
All right.
What's facts? Go ahead.
All right. So this is from, and I'm going to give a couple quotes. Please indulge me. I'm going to give it's kind
Very
of not
quickly.
huge, not huge. This is by the statement of, I'm going to butcher his name, forgive me. Caliph, no, I'm sorry. Anu Ben Abdul Hadi to the Peel Commission of 1937. He says, there is no such country as Palestine. Palestine is a term the Zionists invented. Look it up, it's in the library. Salah Khalaf Abdu Iyad. Forgive me again for butchering that name. Number 2 in the PLO leadership, he states in 1987, we will take Palestine and turn it into a part of the greater Arab nation. And Abdul Malik Damshi, an Israeli Arab Knesset member, said at a solidarity visit in Damascus, Syria, he said, Palestine and Syria are one homeland in 1995. The Arab people will win by the sword. The victory will be won by the jihad of the Arab world. I'm telling you that if the Arabs, the Muslims, put down their sword and stop fighting, they could live in peace in Israel, and there would not be this war. If they'd stop blowing us up and sending Katyusha rockets, we gave them Gush Katif, which we shouldn't have done. We needed it as a buffer land. If they stopped throwing bombs over at us, they would have had peace.
Okay.
You know,
Now,
Jimmy, back
go
in
ahead, Jeff.
Mississippi in 1955, you might have heard a Southern Baptist say, you know, if only those uppity, you know what, would keep quiet and
let us
be
run-
calm,
let
Not
us
the
run
same as
things,
throwing a bomb.
They could live in peace, and as long as they're willing to keep their heads down. And they don't need freedom here because they have Africa. If they want freedom, they should go back to Africa. That's what the Zionists
Jews have been there
say
for
about the Arabs.
3,000 years.
Okay. Let's go to Jerry in Malden. Jerry, you're on 96.9 Boston Talks. Go ahead, Jerry. Thank you. Already brought that up. I brought it up. Stop. If you could stop. Well, remember this. Go ahead, Jerry. I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. Well, interesting theory. Very interesting theory. As I've said, that as you're looking at this, one side, and you know, the rabbi here, he speaks passionately, and most people would say, well, that's a pro-Zionist opinion. Jeff would say, that's not exactly the way it should be. They weren't there for 3,000 years. This will go on and on and on. But my whole issue is this. Unless both sides find a way to come to the table and say, look, you are going to have to recognize the state of Israel. You're going to have to recognize this. And this is the way we're going to work this out. There's not going to be peace there. And as the rabbi said, maybe it's just not meant for us as people to have peace. Maybe we're not bright enough to get there. I don't know. Jeremy's in Rhode Island. Jeremy, you're on 96.9 Boston Talks. Go ahead, Jeremy. Go ahead. Well, some of what you say is true. A lot of what you say is true because I've had to pass through some of those checkpoints and so forth. But I'm sure on the other side, Israel will say, we're doing this for our security. We're doing this.
Can I address this?
Go ahead.
All right. If that's the case, if that was true, then we have to ask, what are the original intentions of these people based upon their history and how they dealt? If you look at the leadership of the greatest voice in Israel at its time in the Muslim nation, his name was Hajj Amin al-Husseini. He was the Mufti of Jerusalem. Why was it back then, before Israel was even a nation, why was it that he was meeting with Hitler, Himmler, and von Ribbentrop to destroy the Jew from the face of the planet, welcoming this destruction of the Jewish people? They weren't a nation, they were just fledgling people trying to survive. Again, the only option back then was for them to lie down and die. I'm telling you that everything that Israel has done, not every Jew, not every Israeli, but the nation of Israel has done, is for the purpose of self-defense and for survival. You've got 15 million Jews in the world, 5 million of them live in Israel, and you've got 1.3 billion Muslims on the face of this planet. Again, we're trying to survive. Stop throwing bombs over at us and we'll let you live in peace.
Okay, Jeff?
Well, when people are under attack, as the Palestinians felt themselves to be in the 1930s and 40s, they sometimes look for allies in strange places, wrong places. Irish people who were struggling for independence against Britain, some of them were also sympathetic to the Nazis. It wasn't justified, but it's the way history works, that people look for allies against their enemies.
So what should we have done? Die?
So let me
Let him
finish,
finish,
if you will.
please. Go ahead.
So the fact is, in this conflict, from beginning to end, the majority of the Zionists who became Israelis were from outside Palestine. They moved to Palestine with the intent, the announced intention, of taking over the land and making it a Jewish state. The fact that the native indigenous people would resist that is natural.
So that's a false premise.
Anybody would do that.
That's a
Anybody
false
would
premise.
resist someone else who was coming into your land with the express purpose of taking it over.
False
You
premise.
say false premise. Why?
Because
briefly. Make it
All right,
briefly.
briefly. Because to say that the ancient indigenous people of the land were the Palestinians means that the Palestinians were Jews and Arabs. The word Palestine does not belong historically to any one specific people.
Group.
It
Okay.
belongs to the region and those who occupy. Why didn't the Palestinians set up their homeland, and why didn't they protest against Jordan when Jordan had the West Bank? Jordan controlled the West Bank and Egypt controlled the Gaza Strip. Where was the protestation? Jordan, give us back our land. Egypt, give us back our land. Where was the protestation when they were under the control of the Jordanians and the Egyptians? I'm telling you this right now, the premise of them being the ancient indigenous people is false, and it doesn't exist historically. You can't prove it.
Boy, Palestinians will have some word with you as
Yeah,
far as
the
that's
people,
concerned.
the people who actually lived there were confused as to who they were.
The Jews for 3,000 years weren't that confused. They knew it was their homeland.
There were 50,000 Jews living in Palestine in 1900, and over 1 million
And you guys-
Arab,
hold on.
Christian, and Muslim Palestinians. So who were the native people there?
If
All
the
right, hold on.
Jewish people had a place to go,
Time, guys. Steve in Leominster. Steve, you're on 96.9 Boston Talks. I got to get ready to wrap this up. This is too good. We're going to do this again. Go ahead.
that's right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Not true. They are not equal citizens in Israel. Not by a long shot.
He's
Yes,
been there.
many, many times.
He just came.
Many,
He just
many
recently
times.
returned from there. So
And I'm very familiar with the Israeli legal system,
Yeah.
in which the Palestinians have many fewer rights than the Jewish Israelis.
Because of the bombs.
Okay. You say because of the bombs.
They don't
And
put their
Palestine-
women
yeah.
and their children under the strict conditions of Sharia law. They allow them to have freedom. They do what they want. They don't put burqas and headdress on their women. The Jews don't demand this. You have this in Muslim nations all over the world where
Please,
women
why
lose
do
their
you
rights.
think you have to change the subject to religious matters?
Because it is a religious
if we
war.
went
It's a
into that-
religious war.
If we went into that among Orthodox Jews in Jerusalem, their women are also sequestered.
And they don't
also
represent the whole
covered,
government.
And there are buses. The women in parts of Jerusalem,
You're right.
the Jewish women,
You're right.
have to ride on the back of the bus.
And they don't represent the government.
Well,
They're a
the
small
government-
group.
But it's happening, regardless of whether
Well,
it
there's
happens
always
to one
fringe
person.
groups.
I don't care if it happens to one person or 1,000. Gentlemen, this has been enlightening. We shall. We will
I
hopefully.
thought I saw a lightning
do
bolt
this
outside.
again. Yeah, I did see a lightning bolt, but that's
Yeah,
all right.
lightning bolts.
Rabbi Morris, I hope to come visit you.
I would love that.
I'll come in and sit with you.
We'll
Jeff,
take
as
lunch.
always, I will sit. No,
Thank
we
you,
will do
Jimmy.
more than take lunch.
Okay.
I plan to come to your forum and both of you sit
Okay.
down and talk. It will be wonderful.
All right.
Thank you both.
My pleasure.
It has been
Thank you.
an enlightenment.
Thank you very
Jeff,
much.
it was a pleasure to meet you. I look
Pleasure.
forward to having more time.
This
with
is
you.
this is going to be interesting.
Passion is good.
When we get back, the whole issue of Paul Levy, the head man at Beth Israel. When I mentioned it a couple of weeks ago, many of you, pitch-poshed it. Why is this such a big story? Well, it's getting bigger and bigger every day. So this was a month ago.